And it is Denver Sports Tonight on this Tuesday night in the Mile High City. He's James Merilatt. I'm Will Petersen. We will roll with you for the next hour as day 2 of legal tampering, my favorite term in all of sports, continues to roll along in the NFL. Another huge day in the free agency market across the league. But as more household names leave Denver, no household names come to Denver. Not quite as dramatic as Russell Wilson, Justin Simmons, or Jerry Jeudy. But, James, today the Broncos lose Josey, Jewell for more than $20 million to the Carolina Panthers and add Malcolm Roach. And if any Broncos fan woke up this morning and had heard of Malcolm Roach, I would say, I don't believe you. So what do you make, James, of the day that was in Broncos country? We will, of course, get to all the quarterbacks that went elsewhere and not to Denver as well.
Well, George Payton tried to warn us, didn't he? I mean, he told us this the day when they had their end-of-season press conference. He told us this when he had his press conference at the Combine. Don't expect us to be active. We're not going to do what we did last year. You can't do that every single year. And here they are apparently sitting in a hammock down at Dove Valley while other people do things. Now, they've restructured some contracts. They've freed up some cap space. They actually have some room to do some things. But, yeah, man, it's been underwhelming, to put it mildly. A lot more people leaving than coming in the door. And, you know, it's easy to say, hey, it's been 8 years since they made the playoffs, 7 straight losing seasons. They went 8-9 a year ago. Who cares if some of the guys that have been a part of the losing leave? Okay, I get it, but a team doesn't get better losing talented players unless they replace them with better players. And at this point, there has been nobody coming in the door that is going to get you excited and going to get you thinking, hey, things are headed in the right direction. So it's been a bit of a depressing couple of days in Broncos country as other teams are ramping up, getting ready to try and make themselves a contender, and the Broncos seem to be firmly in the we are rebuilding, we are tanking, we are playing for the future kind of mode.
Yeah, Russell Wilson ends up, of course, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jerry Jeudy with the Cleveland Browns, Lloyd Cushenberry III out there in Tennessee with the Titans, Josey Jewell with the Panthers, and James, within the last 25 minutes, we've got Diana Rossini of The Athletic reporting. She is hearing the Tennessee Titans are targeting Justin Simmons. That would reunite him with Lloyd Cushenberry out there in Tennessee. We know C.J. Gardner-Johnson went to Philly. But when those reports kind of come in, it's usually a hint, hint, wink, wink. There is momentum, it sounds like, to Justin Simmons joining the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, and Tennessee's an interesting one because they're a bit of a team in transition, right? I mean, Mike Vrabel's gone, so they got a new head coach. They have a young quarterback. You wouldn't think this is a team that's going to go spend big in free agency. They seem like they're in year 1/2 of a rebuild, right, with the new head coach and a second-year quarterback in Will Levis. But here they are going out and spending money on a center, trying to help their young quarterback. Here they are going and signing a safety and trying to build up their defense. So that is interesting to me. You know, you see teams that are in contention or that you think are in contention or Super Bowl kind of mentions type of teams like Philly going and getting Saquon Barkley. It's like, okay, I get it. They feel like they're in their window. They're going to make their move. Tennessee kind of raiding the Broncos and making some splashes in free agency is a bit surprising. And again, it's just one of those things that's a bit depressing if you're a Broncos fan. It's like the Titans are making moves and the Broncos are sitting by just, idly watching. That's a bit tough to stomach.
Yeah, I don't understand quite why Justin Simmons would go there. Of course, if the money's right, that always makes sense. But Simmons has never made the playoffs in his 8 years in the NFL. You would think he would want to go to an instant contender, and maybe he's as bummed as other folks that they signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson up there in Philly. Maybe that's where he wanted to land. And as the musical chairs, the seats start getting taken up, he looks at a team like Tennessee and says, well, they're at least on the rise. They're maybe not in that great of a division. Yeah, the Texans are up and coming, but it feels like the Jaguars have taken a step back. The Colts, Anthony Richardson, still unproven. I don't know. I'm just trying to put myself in his shoes of whether or not I'd want to be a Tennessee Titan. Just like today with Josey Jewell, I get it, man. You've got to go get the bag. But when I saw it was the Carolina Panthers, it was like, oh, really, Josey? What have you won in your career? Nothing in the 6 years that you were with the Denver Broncos. And you go to the worst team in the NFL, it's that fine line these guys have to tread, James, between getting their big payday and also chasing a ring. And it seems like for now, and again, it's hard to blame people. I think we'd all take the money. It seems like the almighty dollar is trumping the chance to win right away.
Yeah, you make a good point. And look, I'm not being critical. If somebody put a huge contract in front of me and no other team was doing it, I'm taking the huge contract. I'll go live in Nashville. That's fine. I'll go live in Charlotte. That's fine. But you may be able to connect some dots here. That's two players who've been here for a long time. They've been a part of a lot of losing seasons. And you start to wonder, like, okay, what has created that culture? Why has it become acceptable to be under 500, not in the playoff race, losing to the Raiders seemingly every time, losing to the Chiefs seemingly every time? And then you see the decisions these guys make, and clearly their motivation isn't winning, right? Like, if their motivation was winning, they would go somewhere other than Tennessee and other than Carolina. Their motivation is money, and again, I'm not being critical of it. We would all probably do that, but both of them made a ton of money, particularly Justin Simmons. He signed a huge contract. He's been in the league for 8 years. It surprises me that he's going somewhere where, hey, it's the biggest contract, allegedly, versus where can I go and be a part of a playoff team? Maybe that speaks to a little bit of the mindset that has plagued this franchise since they won Super Bowl 50. Two of their veteran leaders, two of the biggest names on the team, two of the guys that were cornerstones of that defense are going to the Titans and the Panthers. It's a little bit, it's the same criticism I had of Todd Helton back in the day. And look, we like his loyalty. We like the fact that he wanted to stay a Rocky and he wanted to retire Rocky. But he also didn't want to go somewhere where there was pressure. He didn't want to go to Boston where they expected him to come in and put the Red Sox over the top and help them win a World Series. I was like, pretty comfy here where if you win, 70 games and you say a few funny things at a press conference, nobody's critical of you. It tells you a little bit about how guys are wired, and maybe Justin Simmons and Josey Jewell just aren't wired to be the leaders of a team that is trying to turn things around. I don't think that's a stretch to connect those dots.
No, I think you're making sense there, and you're right. Maybe it's the market wasn't as hot for them from contenders because they just say, that guy, they hadn't won a lot, and we want guys who are proven winners on this team, not guys who have been stuck in that culture of losing, whether it was their fault or not. I think NFL GMs do make sweeping statements like that when they evaluate players of, I don't really want anyone who was on the Denver Broncos the last 6 years because they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. So we'll keep an eye on it. Diana Rossini, again, reporting the Tennessee Titans are targeting Justin Simmons. This all coming down in the last half hour. Let's talk QBs, James, because a lot of them go off the market today. I wrote at denversports.com. It is a good thing that the Broncos haven't signed a QB. Mason and I got into this last night for several minutes on the program about they already have a bridge guy in Jarrett Stidham. They don't need another bridge guy. Why are we doubling up our bridge guys? That would be
fiery,
silly.
By the way.
Yeah, did you hear some of that?
I did. You guys were going at it. I was more with you on that. Like, how many bridge guys do we need?
Right.
Like, Sam Darnold's going to get you where? What's the point? What are we doing here?
Well, you bring up Darnold. He goes to the Vikings. You bring up Drew Locke. I know you're a huge Drew Locke guy. He goes to the Giants. Jameis Winston goes to the Cleveland Browns. This follows Gardner Minshew going to the Raiders. Jacoby Brissett going to the Patriots yesterday. What do you make of the fact that maybe the Broncos are on my side? They don't need a second bridge guy. Or are they just getting told no by these dudes because they don't think Denver's a place where they can really resurrect their career, hence why they're all looking for their third or fourth NFL team?
I want them to be in the camp that you were putting forth in your column today, where it's like, hey, we're going all in on a rookie, so we don't need to go get a bridge guy. We got a bridge guy. Jarrett Stidham can play week 1 if the rookie's not ready. He can play the first 6 weeks, 10 weeks. He can play 17 games if we need him to. But at some point, we're going with the guy we draft at 12 or whoever we move up to take. I wish that was the case. The fact that it was reported that they were in the hunt for Sam Darnold and it came down to the Vikings and the Broncos and they lost out, that suggests that that's not the plan. They're just getting turned down because nobody wants to come here. Nobody wants to be a part of this mess. So I wish it was the way that you want it to be, because I think you're right. I think that's exactly what they should do. Listen, if you're going to tear it down, then tear it down. Don't be partially in here, right? Like,
yes.
Don't blowtorch part of it. Just blowtorch the whole thing.
Right.
And burn it to the ground and then start rebuilding it. So that to me is you don't bring in another quarterback. If Jarrett Stidham is your bridge and he's terrible, great. You have a top 5 pick next year, right? This team isn't going to the playoffs in 2024. So you draft a rookie quarterback, you get him ready, you put him in there when he's comfortable. You try and find some semblance of skill position guys to put around him. But the only quarterback you mentioned that I would have been interested in, and look, I get it. I'm accused of being too big of a fan, but Drew Lock's the only one in that group that has some upside, right? Like he showed some things here. He had some flashes. He got beat out by Geno, but that's Pete Carroll. It's 70-year-old Pete Carroll going with the veteran guy, and Geno played well. But when Drew got a chance, he showed some things up in Seattle.
I mean, he beat Philly on Monday Night Football this year and basically sent Philadelphia into the tailspin that they went from Super Bowl contenders to out in round 1.
On like a 90-yard touchdown drive in the final couple of minutes.
Correct.
We could have talked ourselves into Drew's coming back here, and he had a little football rehab in Seattle, and man, what is Sean Payton going to do with him? We could have talked ourselves into that. Maybe we could have talked ourselves into that with Sam Darnold because he was, a number 3 overall pick at one point? I could talk myself into that with Zach Wilson, believe it or not. He's somebody that's out there, and that kid at BYU, man, he could sling it. I fall in love with the guy that's got all the skills in the world, so maybe I could talk myself into that. I have no interest in Jacoby Brissett and guys that just have relatively mediocre skill sets to where there's no upside, right? Like, yeah, they could come in and maybe instead of being just a dumpster fire and going 3-14, you go 7-10. Well, what's the point of that? So you can pick 11th instead of picking 3rd?
So we can do what we did with Case Keenum and Joe Flacco and Teddy Bridgewater? Like, no, it's got to get really, really bad before it gets better again. You got to hit rock bottom before you can know what rock bottom is and start working your way out. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's what is the point of a veteran Band-Aid? John Elway tried about 5 different veteran Band-Aids, and none of them work. So those 6 guys are off the board that we
give me the guy that's got a little bit of upside, and that have been Darnold, Locke, and it would be Zach Wilson. He's the only guy left.
Well,
so
Darnold,
sorry, I interrupted
Locke,
you, but those guys at least would be a little bit intriguing.
Well, I just want to reset who's off the board. So Minshew's off the board. Brissett is off the board. Marcus Mariota goes to the Commanders. He's off the board. Darnold goes to the Vikings. He's off the board. Locke goes to the Giants. He's off the board. Jameis Winston goes to the Browns. He's off the board. So who's left then? And let's see. You like Zach Wilson from the Jets. That would have to be in a trade. I know Mace and Jake are huge fans of Hal. Why?
Okay,
Sam Howell.
What is the fascination here? 21 touchdowns, 21 picks.
At 21 picks, a lot of picks, man.
He led the league in interceptions.
A lot of picks.
What are we talking about here?
And then Jimmy G will get released by the Raiders tomorrow. So Hal, Wilson, Jimmy G, that may be the end of the list, James.
Jimmy G's got a little bit of intrigue, doesn't he? Doesn't he? He's won some games. He started a Super Bowl. Again, I have no interest in a guy that's going to make you mediocre at best. None.
That's what Jimmy G will do, though.
You're probably right. Whereas, like, Zach Wilson probably is going to make you 3-14. He probably is. But he does have a ton of ability. There's a reason he went number 2 overall, right? Like, we look at the draft this year, and it's Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May. He was in that conversation 3 years ago. So he's got a ton of ability. I would rather swing for that, and if it's a total miss, great. You're terrible and you get a high draft pick next year, and if you happen to be like, hey, got him out of New York, he's not a part of the dumpster fire that is the Jets, he's not being coached by Nathaniel Hackett, we can make something out of him, there's an upside to that. I'm a swing for the fences kind of guy when it comes to quarterbacks. Well, give me the guy that's either you strike out and you're, kind of spinning yourself into the dirt like Reggie Jackson, or you're hitting it into the second deck out in left field. Give me one of those 2.
See, I would just tell you on the 3 that are left, let's say if there was 9 in it, and then there's 3 left, and then as Cecil Lammey points out to me right now, Ryan Tannehill too. That's another one. So there's really 4 left. It's a good call from Cease. Out of those 4, my vote would be no, 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 and no. I don't want any of those 4, James.
I don't either, but if you made me pick one, I'm taking Zach Wilson.
My point is, though, they've dodged 6 bullets by not signing anyone in these first 48 hours. I'm hoping they dodge 4 more, and I'm hoping when this week wraps up, you know who the QBs on the roster are? Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci. Because you know what that does? That makes your sense of urgency get even higher that you have to get a round 1 QB come April 25th. You cannot go to bed after the first night of the NFL draft without a round 1 QB. And then Mace tried to tell me last night, well, he needs time. Okay, cool. I was told Stidham was a bridge. I was told that's why they gave him 2 years, $10 million. But at the same time, James, I'd rather just throw him in there week one.
Why does he need time?
Yeah,
Did C.J. Stroud need time?
No, he didn't. If you draft J.J. McCarthy, I want to see him week one against the Steelers.
Me too.
You draft Drake May, I want to see him week one against the Steelers. Now, I'm guessing it'll be the Steelers. We obviously don't know the NFL schedule yet. We will in the next couple months. But I want to see a rookie QB round one, and I really hope they don't sign Jimmy G or Ryan Tannehill, and I really hope they don't trade for Zach Wilson or Sam Howell. I am good with Stidham and DiNucci until the draft.
I am with you. The only caveat to that would be if you come out of free agency and all those other 4 guys sign elsewhere, get traded elsewhere, and to use your words, you dodge all 10 bullets. At that point, you go into the draft, you're desperate. And it does put you in a position where you may pick somebody you don't want to pick, or you may make a trade that you don't want to make because you don't have another option. Because you're looking at it saying, oh, blank, we got to play Jarrett Stidham, and there's nobody behind him. Jarrett Stidham with J.J. McCarthy behind him, fine. Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci, and that's how you're going into training camp? That's a disaster. So it does put you in a position where you're having to do something instead of wanting to do something. That would be a little bit of a concern. But I'm for the most part with you. I have those 4 guys. Do I think any of them are the future? Do I think any of them are going to be hoisting a Lombardi trophy? And as Russ likes to tell us, feeling that that chill against his cheek? No, they're not. Zach Wilson's the only one that has a chance, and it's a 1% chance. I would say Jimmy Garoppolo has a 0.05% chance, and nobody else is even registering. But you don't want to be desperate going into the draft. You don't, because that puts you in a position where you're making bad decisions. But right now, Will, is there a worse roster on March 12th than the Broncos in the NFL? Is there one that's worse?
Well, it's a good question because the odds makers have put them at 120-1 to win the Super Bowl, which we have learned in just the last little bit is the worst odds the Broncos have ever had in the preseason to win the Super Bowl since 1977. That's as far back as the database goes. So what's the saying? Vegas generally knows. To answer your question, it might be the worst roster or one of the worst rosters in the NFL because 120-1, you might as well go buy a lottery ticket. They ain't winning the Super Bowl because this team is that bad.
Well, they have the worst roster on March 12th. Now, you get through the draft where they're picking 12, and do the Commanders have a better roster? I don't know. I would argue probably not.
Well, they got McMoney and Austin Eckler up there, so.
And they're picking second, right? So they're gonna land one of those quarterbacks, whereas the Broncos have no guarantee of landing one of those quarterbacks. So, right now I think they're in the conversation. Come May 1st, when the draft is over, if they take a cornerback out of Alabama, they officially have the worst roster in football. And they are on the clock for the first pick in the 2025 draft.
Could that be the plan? That would be my next question to you. You and I have gone round and round on this. I don't think Sean Payton signed up for a rebuild. You don't think Sean Payton signed up for a rebuild. But could, in a weird way, if they don't go QB round one and they don't get one of these 4 QBs and we truly go on a camp, Jarrett Stidham not only not in a competition, but just flat out the starter for the Denver Broncos. Is that a evil genius type plan to go 2-15 and get Shedeur Sanders?
No, I don't think anybody intends to tank in the NFL. I really don't. It's such a year-to-year league. All the players are, playing for their next job. I think to some extent the coaches, Sean Payton isn't probably in this category, but to some extent are playing for the next job. He doesn't want to have a 2-15 on his resume. He doesn't. He loves looking at it and seeing all those winning seasons and above 500 and how many times he's made the playoffs. He doesn't want to look at his Pro Football Database page and see a 2-15. So I don't. I think more likely, Will, is he truly believes he can win with Jarrett Stidham or Ben DiNucci or anybody. And, you can call it arrogance. I would probably lean toward arrogance or hubris, but it could just be confidence that, hey, I know what I'm doing, and I can win with somebody who, if they can run my offense and they can, go through the progressions and hit the right guy at the right time, we're going to be successful. I think it's more that than it is anything else. I don't think they're tanking. I think Sean Payton truly believes he can win more games with Jarrett Stidham than Russell Wilson, which is laughable, but that's what he thinks.
Okay, but let's say they don't get a QB in the next 48 to 72 hours, and all eyes are on April 25th, the night one of the NFL draft. Isn't this why you pay Sean Payton $18 million? Dude, you're picking at 12. And by most people's accounts, there's at least 5, if not 6, first-round draft picks. You got to find a way to get one of those 6 on your roster before the night ends, and you got to find a way to make him a star. That's why we're paying him $18 million. Maybe we're all just, not you and I, but like collectively overthinking this of $18 million, he picks 12. One of those 6 guys is going to be there at 12, and he can either trade back and then trade back up. There's no limit on how much you have to trade. If he goes back to 25 and goes, oh, shoot, I got to get to 21 to get Bo Nix. Or he just sits at 12 and gets lucky, and J.J. McCarthy does fall in his lap at 12 for whatever reason. Isn't that the plan, James? The plan is we're going to sit here on April 26th, which is a Friday, and we're going to talk about a round 1 quarterback being drafted by the Denver Broncos.
Maybe, but do you feel good about that plan?
I actually do. What's the
history of Sean Payton developing a rookie quarterback that makes you feel good about it?
But he doesn't have Drew Brees sitting on his roster right now. Like, he's not stupid. He understands he has to get a quarterback. I would say as we sit here today on March 12th, it's a 95% chance they draft a round 1 QB.
I think he thinks he can turn Jarrett Stidham into maybe not Drew Brees, but he loves to hear, guys like Mark Schlereth talk about what he did with Taysom Hill and what he did with Jameis Winston and what he did with Teddy Bridgewater and point out those things versus what he did with Drew Brees. He thinks he can win with anybody. I truly believe that. I think he thinks he can win with Jarrett Stidham.
Then why is he pursuing Sam Darnold, though?
I don't know.
But that kind of makes my point, that he doesn't think he can win with Jarrett Stidham if he's willing to go down to the wire with the Vikings for Sam Darnold.
Why wasn't he at Bo Nix's pro day today?
Because free agency is 48 hours old, and the University of Oregon is absolutely silly to have a pro day in the middle of the busiest off-season week in the NFL.
I would agree with that, but seriously, he had to be at Dove Valley today for them to do nothing? For them to re-sign a fullback?
Well, and they got Malcolm Roach.
All right, run out and get your Malcolm Roach jersey.
Sorry, I'm not trying to disparage Malcolm Roach.
Come on. They got a guy. And Malcolm Roach, I'm sure, is a fine player, but he is a plug-and-play guy in the middle of the defensive line, a rotational guy that is – he's Sylvester Williams.
He's
right?
apparently really good against the run because when I pointed out he only had 1 sack in 4 years, apparently I was looking at the wrong data. So
I get so tired of things like that. You know what that reminds me of? Is when I was not happy with the Chris Manhurt signing, and all I heard was, he's a great run blocker. And you also hear, he's a great special teams player. You know what that's code for? Hey, here's something we can't prove or disprove, but we want to make it sound like it's a good selection. He's really good against the run. Really? So the Saints don't give a crap about stopping the run next year? That's what you're telling me. They don't care if they can stop the run next year. They're going to let this guy go and let the Broncos get him for, basically bargain basement prices. Come on. Give me a break. You look at the stats that can be, the numbers that can be backed up, and they're not very impressive. So somebody throws out something that you can't argue against. He's a real good special teamer. Okay, all right. He's really good against the run.
And if he's that good against the run, then why haven't they cut DJ Jones yet? That would be my thinking. If you really liked Malcolm Roach, and you're really a guy who started 5 games in 4 years, was going to come in and just be a stud for you, then you would have gotten the cap relief from DJ Jones at some point this afternoon. And I'll give him another day or two to do that. I understand the new league year starts tomorrow. But if Malcolm Roach is all he's cracked up to be, they'll move on from DJ Jones in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, he's a rotational guy. He's a Mike Purcell type of guy. Like, don't insult my intelligence telling me he's something more than that. He's not. He's not. That's where the Broncos are shopping, right? Everybody else is at Neiman Marcus. Everybody else is, strolling the streets of Cherry Creek, and the Broncos are at Dollar General. That's what they're doing today.
I mean, it sort of feels that way. The story of the day on Monday was the kicker, and the story of the day on Tuesday was obviously losing talent, but it was the fullback. So
speaking of the kicker, don't you think it's a little? I think it's petty if they give him number 3.
Well, we're gonna get to that, okay? So
hold
that
thought. I don't mean
thought.
to jump it, but I think that's petty.
Hold that thought. In the meantime, I do want to remind folks we are really growing our Denver Sports YouTube channel. So if you could help us be a part of that, particularly by subscribing, that would do us a big favor. Find us on YouTube at Denver Sports. As usual, leave a like, leave a comment, share a video, and, of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Coming up